Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. I've been pulling for LSU for about 30 years, and for the first 25 of those, this wasn't a thing. Like, it was guys from Ohio State, guys from USC, guys from Oklahoma winning this award. And Joe Burrow changed that in 2019, and Jayden Daniels walked right through that door again and won it in 2023. And so I think it's a huge deal for the program to have two Heisman Trophy winners in such a short window. You could never convince me that that's not a big deal on Lincoln Riley's resume, and I think it's a big deal as far as the brand of LSU goes, and specifically the football program and quarterbacks who are transferring that can be put into a situation like this. And Jayden just excelled from start to finish. And I think there are a lot of different opinions on what went into winning this award. A lot of times we see this award as a slam dunk. Joe Burrow was a slam dunk. Cam Newton was a slam dunk. You knew that Johnny Manziel was going to win that award by the end of it. You knew Devontae Smith, with the outrageous numbers that he had put up, was going to win that award. Caleb Williams felt like he put it to bed last year. So there's usually not a ton of drama, but people look at things a different way. And because Jayden Daniels was not playing in the most high-profile games each and every week, I think a lot of people nationally don't have a great appreciation for just how good he was. And those of us, certainly if you're listening to me, you're watching every game that LSU plays, and you understand how good he was. And I just kind of wanted to walk through it with some of my thoughts as I looked back over my notes and listening to some of the things that I had said, and going back over statistics and box scores and highlights. And I just want to go through game by game kind of what this journey looked like, because sometimes I think it's kind of fun to walk down a memory lane, especially when there's something that great at the end of it. You know, the Florida State game, if you want to look at it objectively, Jayden Daniels played a decent game. LSU as a whole played a very poor game. Jayden Daniels' statistics were very good. He threw for 346 yards and ran for 64 more, so he was up at 400 yards of total offense. And LSU scored 28 points, and all that looks pretty good. But you do have to realize, if you're going to talk about this objectively, that Brian Thomas had a 75-yard touchdown in complete garbage time. Now, yes, Kyron Lacey did drop a big third down. Yes, Malik fell down on the side. There are a lot of different nuances to that game, but the Florida State game was the worst game that Jayden Daniels played all year. He still went for 400 yards of total offense against a good defense. Then you came back against Grambling, and Jayden rolled up 5 touchdowns in that game, and it was a glorified scrimmage. The Mississippi State game is when he kind of made everyone in purple and gold go, God, if it could look like that a lot, like that offense could be pretty good. In that game, he was 30 out of 34. 361 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air. He also ran for 60 more and ran for 2 touchdowns. But in that game, he was dropping the ball in the bucket to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. He was outrunning line. He looked so much better than everybody else on the field in Starkville that day that it was the story of the game. And then you come home to play Arkansas, and while I don't think anybody was thrilled with the way that game went, if you're an LSU fan, because Arkansas was just coming off that BYU loss, and it didn't look great. We know now that Arkansas wasn't a good team. But Jayden went 20 of 29 in that game. He threw for 320 yards and 4 touchdowns. He did throw a pick. He ran for 36 yards. But the story in that game, to me, as I look back at it, LSU trailed 13-3 with 48 seconds to go in the first half. You're down 13-3 with less than a minute to go in the half. He engineers a 3-play drive right down the field, hits Brian Thomas for a 49-yard touchdown, and then the second half looks like this. 3 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 9 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 10 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 9 plays, 72 yards, and the game-winning chip shot field goal. This is one of those things that I'm talking about that nobody around the country saw. Nobody cares about. Nobody goes back and looks at it. You look at the box score, you say, I threw for 320 and 4 touchdowns. Arkansas sucks. Who cares? Well, the fact of the matter is that Jayden Daniels had to go out there from 48 seconds to go in the first half through the entirety of the game
and score a touchdown on every drive until the last one where they kick a game-winning field goal. You had to score every time down the field. And that's when I did that radio spot in Shreveport 2 weeks ago, and they said, well, wouldn't they have gone 9-3 without Jayden Daniels? No. They'd have lost to Arkansas. Are you ready to sit here and tell me that you know that Garrett Nussmeier would go right down the field every single time he had to against Arkansas? I'm not. I hope. We may find out one day, but I'll take the Heisman guy. And he was that good that day. LSU went to Oxford. Early fumble. Remember the guy trucked him when he tried to jump and he fumbled, just a huge hit. That was the point of the season. We're going, please, Jayden, slide every once in a while. But he throws for 414 yards in that game, 4 touchdowns without an interception. He ran for 99 more. That's 513 yards and 5 touchdowns. Again, that's what we're talking about. Like, yeah, LSU's record's not very good. They lost to Ole Miss. Why? It was not because Jayden Daniels had 513 yards of offense and accounted for 5 touchdowns. I promise. After he fumbled early in that game, Jayden Daniels led 7 touchdown drives, and then you had 2 punts. And those 2 punts, one of which you can pretty much immediately direct at the Caleb Jackson drop on the flat route. But 7 out of 10 drives after that fumble were touchdowns, and the last one they just ran out of time, or they would have gone down there and scored. So he's great that day. Missouri. What an effort he gave at Missouri. And it doesn't stay in the stat sheet either. 15 of 21 for 259 yards is not like strike a pose Heisman stuff. It's good. 259 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also carried the ball 15 times for 130 yards and a touchdown. And oh, by the way, his ribs were hurt. He got crushed going into the end zone. And then came back after that, had to come out of the game, had to go to the medical, get checked out, came back in the game. And the play of that game, and we'll go to the audio here of that, was a 3rd and 3 at the Missouri 35-yard line. LSU trailed by 5. And Jayden Daniels is hurt. And either he said, give me the ball, or LSU's offensive staff said, you're going to have to take the ball. And on a 3rd and 3 from the 35-yard line, he did this.
Quarterback draw. The C's part. There goes Daniels again. He's looking for the end zone. Touchdown.
Oh, man.
And if you watch that video, for those that aren't watching on YouTube, he's crawling, trying to get up out of the end zone. He's hurt so bad. He runs 35 yards through the entire defense and around the second level and scores a touchdown. Ridiculous stuff from Jayden Daniels that day. Under the gun, behind in the game, and hurting. He was that good. Auburn, 20 of 27 in that game for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. He carried it 11 times for 93 yards. If LSU had a good defense this year, LSU usually had, I'm not giving you the, well, if they were just average, if they had a good defense this year, that's what every game LSU played would have looked like. 48-18, he goes for a bajillion yards, in this case, over 420, and they win by 30. Like, that's what it would have looked like if LSU's defense was good. But it only looked like that one time this year. Against Army, 11 of 15, he throws for 279 and 3 scores. The play of that game was when he rolled out to the right, about to go out of bounds, and flips it over the top to Brian Thomas in stride for the longest play of the season, 86-yard touchdown. He only ran for 6 yards in that game, so for all the, well, he just compiled a bunch of stats against nobody. I mean, against Army, he ran for 6 yards. I don't know how much stat compiling that was. I could look at Georgia State, and we'll get there, but you should point it all out if you're going to point some of it out. Then they go to Tuscaloosa, and just like Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase in the first drive of that game for a touchdown, he announces his presence on that scene in Tuscaloosa with the 46-yard touchdown over the top to Malik. Alabama led 21-14 with a minute and a second left to go in the second quarter. And at that point, you're probably thinking, okay, you're only down a score, and you get the ball to start the second half, so you don't have to force the issue. LSU had the ball at their own 25, and then Caleb Jackson made a catch for 1 yard and got tackled, and the clock ran down to 36 seconds. So LSU had the ball at their own 26-yard line with 36 seconds to go. And what does Jayden do? He runs for 40 yards through the Alabama defense and gets you into reasonable situation with 13 seconds left to go in the half. LSU, with those 13 seconds to go, was at the 26-yard line.
Daniels throws, caught, and a touchdown. Kyron Lacy.
Boy, he poured this one in, didn't he? Remember we were talking about Alabama doesn't want to score too early? I guess they did.
It's 36 seconds to go. He makes that play, but before that, a minute to go, nobody would go for that. But because Daniels can run for 40 through Alabama's defense, did you see him against Georgia? And then throw a strike into Kyron Lacy before the half of the touchdown, LSU was able to do that. And then, look, we know what happens in that game. They have the tip ball interception, then Jayden gets knocked out. But he still, in 3 quarters, goes for 219 yards passing and 2 scores, plus 11 carries for 163 yards on that defense. He also ran in a touchdown. You extrapolate those numbers out, and it's an unbelievable game. But he wasn't able to do it. And again, that's what game they lost. And everybody goes, well, they lost the most important game. Well, he was in the injury tent. So what's he supposed to do? But he comes back against Florida. And in my opinion, when you look at this game, people say, well, he didn't have a Heisman moment. I say, BS. He did have a Heisman moment. He had a couple of them, and they came against the Florida Gators. The first came midway through the second quarter.
Caleb Jackson is his running back, and Daniels pulls it, takes it himself. He's got the sideline. Jayden Daniels off to the races. And a bend back inside. He takes it to the house. 85 yards for Daniels.
Herb Tyler could really run. Jordan Jefferson could really run. There have been some in the past, sure. I've never seen a quarterback at LSU that could tuck it and outrun an entire SEC defense. That I have not seen. And he did it that day, and I remember watching that play, and he got to the corner and I went, oh my God, he's going to outrun the whole defense. And they just never caught him. And everyone, I think, on Twitter that I'm following that's even not in the LSU world was like, whoa, that was a serious play. But you have to show that it's not just a flash in the pan. And I think Jayden Daniels pretty well solidified that when he followed the 85-yard run-up in a situation where LSU had a 3-point lead, 31-28, 7 minutes and 16 seconds to play in the third quarter, and this one probably put him in the lead to win the Heisman, maybe for good.
Florida drops into a zone. Daniels trying to run it. Got some space. What a move! Jayden Daniels again! Jayden Daniels, touchdown LSU! 51 yards with it.
The 85-yarder might be more impressive just looking at the sheer speed and what he showed he could do there. That one from 51 was the most beautiful play he made all year. He's weaving left and right. The Florida defenders are all over your screen, but none of them get close, and he's finding blockers and finding his way into the end zone. And that night, he did something no one in the history of college football has ever done. He threw for 372 yards and 3 touchdowns without an interception, which is brilliant on its own. And then he ran it 12 times for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is brilliant on its own. He did them both. And no player in college football this year was equipped to do anything like that. None of the guys with him in New York, none of the guys that didn't make it to New York, nobody was equipped to do that night against Florida. And he did. And they made sure they fed him against Georgia State. 25 of 30 for 413 and 6 touchdowns. Then he ran for 2 more. He had 8 touchdowns in that game. And they called that game to help him win the Heisman Trophy. And he made the plays that a Heisman Trophy winner would make. Because he did that against those teams doesn't take away from what he did against Florida, what he did against Bama. Doesn't take away from what he did against Arkansas and Missouri. It's just part of the season. And great players are going to make bad teams look bad, and he did. And then against Texas A&M, the Aggies lead 24-14 early in the third. That's a 10-point lead early in the third quarter, and LSU scored 28 points in the second half, 3 of which were on absolute dimes into the end zone by the eventual Heisman Trophy winner. An absolute pleasure to watch from start to finish, a deserving recipient and truly one of the greatest players in the history of LSU football. Like Joe, it was quick, and we didn't know him when he was 16, 17, 18. Not like Leonard Fournette in that way where you knew about him when he was a freshman. You had to get him. You fought the recruiting battles. You got him in. You saw him develop. These guys kind of showed up, and it feels like in an instant they were gone, but that doesn't diminish the legacy in any way to me. Just a spectacular year to watch Jayden Daniels, and it was a treat to watch him lift the Heisman Trophy. That's something he'll have the rest of his life, and something this LSU football program will have forever as well. So tip of the cap to 5. JD5, the Heisman Trophy winner.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.